Are you getting ready to do some group work and you're kind of dreading that? You're not really sure how to make it go smoothly? Well, I've got some tips and strategies for you. I'm Christy from Adventures in ISTEM. I'm a middle school science teacher with over 20 years experience, and I love helping teachers learn skills that will help empower their students and help them take more ownership of their learning. Now, I do group work all the time. In fact, my students actually sit in groups. They're always talking, they're always having conversations. I have a high level of language learners, so it's really important that my students are able to talk and collaborate with someone else to share ideas. But it can get a little crazy and chaotic sometimes. So I have some little tips that will help you if you're getting ready to do some group work. Tip number one, allow the students to choose. Now, before you freak out, I know, some teachers really like to have the control. But I want to challenge you on that because by allowing your students to actually choose their groups, they cannot complain when someone in their group is not doing the work because they are the ones who made that choice. Now, if you want, you could have different numbers of groups. You could say, okay, you can choose who's going to be in your group, and your groups have to be between 2, 3, and 4 students. That way they can choose to be in just a pair, they can choose to be in a triad, or they can be in a group of 4 students. The important part of group work, though, is to make sure that everyone is responsible and pulling their own weight. Another strategy that you can do, strategy number 2, is instead of giving a whole group grade, have the students be responsible for their own individual write-up. Now, if you're doing like a group poster, you can have it where they have this overarching theme, but every student has to do their own little part of it. That way you can give a group grade, but make that group grade maybe 10% of the overall student grade, and then 90% will be their own individual part. That way they're still having to work as a group, they're having to learn how to collaborate and work together, but it's not going to affect them as much, especially for those students that are your high level achievers who are freaking out all the time because they hate group work because they end up doing most of it because they don't want their grades to drop, right? And then you have those other students who really, they could care less if they're going to do the assignment or not. Well, this way, it's not going to really have that much of effect on the overall group. So again, having each individual be graded individually for that group. Having the group grade, have a group grade, but have most of the overall project grade be the student individual part. So that's the number 2. Number 3, make sure that you have roles. It is important to have group roles, especially if you're doing a group project of like 3 or 4 students where they have to have an end result. Having someone be in charge, I always call it, I try to make it like more business-like. So I have my CEO, that is the person that is in the head. They have to make sure the group is, staying on task, that everyone's doing their own job, that nothing is, going off the wayside. And I tell the CEO, I said, if your group's not working, like I'm going to be coming to you. I'm going to be asking you, what are you doing? How are you delegating the individual jobs? How are you making sure that everyone's doing their part? Then you have what I call the reporter. Now, this is the person that could be scribing for what the group is coming up with, explaining. They're gonna share out the group's ideas. I have an ambassador, and students love being the ambassador because the ambassador is the only person that is allowed to physically get up out of their seat and go ask other groups for help and support. They also can go ask me after they've already talked to a few other groups. So the students love being the ambassador of it because then they can go talk. I sometimes have an ambassador meeting where all ambassadors get together and they share their ideas of what they're coming up with, what they're discovering, so they can go back to their groups and share out. So the ambassador is a great one. Then you have the materials person or the IT person. This is the person making sure that everything that the group needs, that they have it. The lab materials, the computers, the books, whatever it is, they're the ones responsible for that. So making sure that students have their own individual jobs, again, helps them learn how to collaborate, how to work together on a certain project, which is something they're going to have to learn to do in life also. My fourth tip for group work goes against another one. So remember, these are all tips, is you choose the one that you are going to use. But my fourth tip is to, instead of having it individually, every single student has to do a write-up. And what you do is you tell the students this ahead of time. And this is really important to do where you're not making the groups, right? This is really important for you to do when you are letting them choose. But what you're going to tell them is they're going to put their stuff like in a folder. Everyone puts their own individual handout in the folder, and you are grading one only. That's right. You grade one. That is going to cut down the grading on your end. It's also going to make sure that they're working together to make sure they have the same information on their write-ups. If it's like a lab report they're working together for doing an experiment. Every single student should be writing pretty much the same information. They're all putting it together, but you're going to grade one only. So this is important. And when you're doing this, again, have those jobs. Make sure that CEO person is checking everyone's work, making sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. But by grading only one, it's saving yourself some time. It's also making sure that the students do work together, because they know that they are not responsible for just their grade, but someone else's. And sometimes putting that in, making them be more responsible for someone else's grade, helps them to, be more invested in the group work. Sometimes. Again, you have to fill it out, know your students. So that's the fourth tip. The last tip, the fifth tip, if you are going to put your students into your own group, I highly recommend that you have a variety of different types of students. Do not put all the high-level students together and the low-level students together. Now, that sometimes can work. It really can. You could group them by the level of ability, putting all the highs together, putting all the lows together. But I have found that most of the time that doesn't work as well. You can split it up, rank them by their level of ability, and then split the class in half and put those, mixing the higher half together and the lower half together. That could work. What I usually do is if I'm going to group them, I just number them how many groups I'm going to have. So 7 groups, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Next set, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That allows me to have a high student, a couple middle students, and then a lower student also working together. You could also instead have the students choose their favorite classes, get in an area where they're grouped by their favorite classes, and then group them that way if you wanted to. So that way they're grouped by interest. They have something in common in their groups. Those are different ways that you can group your students to make group work more flow more easily. But again, the best way for me, what I have found, is by letting the students choose their groups. And also what I found the best also is by having the group part of the grading be a small amount of the full grade and having that individual part be most of the grade. That way, again, they're learning how to work together. They are collaborating, but their overall grade is not going to be affected that much in a group work situation. I hope these tips helped. Let me know how you do your grouping in your classes.
Thank you for watching another Adventures in ISTEM and Beyond video. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more Adventures in ISTEM and Beyond videos. For more ideas on how to incorporate science, technology, and skills for life into your classroom, go to adventuresinistem.com.